Tucked away in the woods of Santa Barbara, it may not look like much, but our family's humble chicken coop contains a remarkable story of tragedy and triumph, and it all begins with a hen named Big Chungus. To help tell this story, I'm joined by our neighbor, Denise, the primary caretaker of these hens.
Big Chungus was like the heavy-duty queen chicken in the chicken coop.
Big Chungus was tough, feisty, and fierce, and in an environment where sleeping position determines one's place in the social order, Big Chungus was high up in the ranks.
She didn't sleep inside the coop with the rest of the chickens. She would fly up and sit on this little house inside the chicken coop and be outside. There were 3 chickens that she would sit with, but she was the biggest, and she was tough. And she never would let me pick her up or anything inside the coop because she was, like the big chungus in the coop.
She had her whole life figured out, but soon, everything would change.
She was just sitting inside the coop and her tail was down, and she used to always be fluffy with her tail up. And then there was like blood on her leg, and she couldn't walk. I was upset about her getting hurt, but I didn't know really what had hurt her yet. And then the next night after Big Chungus went to the vet, my son was outside. It was late at night, and he told me that, hey, I hear like a chicken in distress, like it can't breathe. And so I came running over here and went into the coop, and there was one of the little white silky chickens laying on the ground like she was dead, and the weasel was on her. I knew then that weasel had gotten Big Chungus. That's what happened to her leg. So when that happened, my killer instinct came out. I was seriously trying to kill that weasel with my phone, because that's all I had. But the weasel was the wiliest little vicious thing I had ever seen. I mean, that little thing was just like a little demon. So I started hammering at the weasel in the coop with my phone, and then the weasel flew out. And, we've never seen that weasel since.
Big Chungus may have escaped the deadly encounter with her life, but the true consequences were yet to be seen.
So I brought her home, and I kept her in my bathtub, and, kept, feeding her and taking care of her leg and massaging her leg so that she'd get circulation.
But Big Chungus never regained circulation in her leg.
Well, when the weasel caught the chicken, the weasel just gnawed on its leg. I mean, it didn't bite the leg off. It just made so many holes in it that it bled out, because there was blood all over the ground. It had destroyed the circulation to the leg.
While a chicken's leg is quite flexible, Big Chungus soon found her leg to be totally dried out and useless.
Then after a certain amount of time, the vet just said, well, we're going to have to amputate. I was like, oh. And so as soon as she, told me that they were going to amputate, she amputated got that leg off. But, and then we had to bandage it and keep it really clean. And, so she was in the bathtub for a long time.
Big Chungus gained a prosthetic leg to replace the old one, but she stood to lose far more than mere mobility from this change.
As I kept watching how this chicken would walk with this prosthetic leg, so we could figure out how to get the leg just right so she could walk, I started to notice how the chicken's feet are really an important part of their whole personality. Like, they all have a different way of walking. And I started to realize how big this would be for the chicken to lose its foot. She lost part of her identity by losing that leg.
So her ability to stand here and be all upright and show that she has a full presence is very important in her pecking order with the other hens, to show that she is strong at full height and capable of just being higher in the pecking order than if she was only down on one leg, not able to support herself. So it's very important how she is treated by the other hens in both eating and her place within the coop, where she sleeps, where she gets to lay eggs, where she eats. Everything is important and influenced by her being able to posture.
While she was going through this, she pretty much lost her status in the chicken coop. And she was like a liability in the chicken coop. You know, and she would keep to herself, and the other chickens would peck at her. So I kept keeping her in my bathtub.
The social fallout of Big Chungus's amputation was devastating. Unable to stand up for herself and demoted to the lowest sleeping area, it seemed as if all was lost. And yet, from this low point, a great friendship was formed.
So the two chickens that were injured, they became friends. They stayed in the bathtub together. The little Silky just went right back in, and in the pecking order with that little Silky, she was always on the low pecking order, so it was just more of the same for her. But when this one went back in, that little Silky would go up to her and hang out with her, and because then they had their friendship, and I think that really helped the little Silky too.
But even when it seemed like so much of Big Chungus's identity was lost, she still remained a fighter, and gradually she worked her way back into the coop hierarchy.
So little by little, I kept leaving her in longer until then she was able to stay for a week. She started to, she seemed depressed for a while, and then she started to seem better when she was in with the chickens and had her status. But I couldn't feed her with the other chickens. I had to feed her separate, because otherwise they'd just go over there and knock her out of the way and eat all her food. Within a few days of having the prosthetic leg, she had flown up on the perch. Like, it was so cool, because it was like she wasn't thinking she didn't have a leg. But she was so happy to be up above the other chickens. So that kind of gave her pecking order. It's just been a process of her recovering from this shocking event. And it's now that was in August, and now it's December, and she's just really started to get feisty and be like a chicken again. But now she's getting fatter, and she's holding her own with the other chickens. She pushes the other chickens away if they take her food. So she's doing much better at being a big, tough chicken.
After months of hardship, Big Chungus is finally reclaiming her rank among the coop. A legendary tale of perseverance, Big Chungus pushed forward when it seemed like everything was lost. And in doing so, she serves as an inspiration to us all.
The moral of the story is you can't make friends with a weasel, whether it's an animal or a person.